Yes, we can see it.
And it's changed screen?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, so we're going to speak today. We're going to try and bring it a little bit together, what we have been learning up to now, and what happens when we have some of these complexities in a shidduch situation. So let's bring a question that we got from a Ram in the Yeshivat Desder. This is the question he has. Yeshi Talmid, Ben 24, Shu Yotzem Bachora. We have a Talmid has a going out with a woman, a young woman. She says she's got endometriosis. We already studied a little bit about endometriosis. We'll speak about it in a moment. Everything's good, everything's wonderful. They're very appropriate, very good, it's good shidduch. And he asked now whether he should continue with this skill. So endometriosis, what we learned a little bit about. We know that about it's common. Maybe 10% of all women have endometriosis. It's usually undiagnosed. It's very commonly undiagnosed. It has dysmenorrhea of painful menstruation. It's included with other types of pains, so pelvic pain, intestine pain, dyspareunia, painful intercourse. It often has fertility problems. Maybe about 30% of the women with endometriosis will have fertility problems, maybe more. It can be treated. We know there's medication. We can operate it. It's not always effective, of course. And of course, there's physiotherapy, and there's also just overcoming the pain. So the question, what do you think? Did she have to tell him? Did she have to tell him I have endometriosis? Is it something that's that important that he had to tell him? If she came to you for advice, would you advise he has to tell him? You have to tell him, shidduch, you have to say. And how do we advise the young man? The young man now has that information. What do we take to him? And the other, if she was your student and she told you, but she didn't say what to tell him, she just told you, or you found out, she asked a question about painful intercourse, whatever it may be, what would you do? Do I have to share that information? Do I not? And these are questions that we have the whole time, because there's multi-levels here. If we think about it, what are the shaylas? So first of all, the questions that we have is Lashon Hara. Is the question of Lashon Hara, not Lashon Hara. Lo tamad adam recha. On the other hand, we know information as Rabbonim, as counselors, as poskim, that's very important, that may have an impact on a person's life. We have a question of Mekach Taud. At what point do we zig Mekach Taud? We could ask, who is the shoel? Who's asking? Mi sholim, who asks? And matai, and when? At what point is it? What point of the shidduch? Before the shidduch, during the shidduch, towards the end? And these are really the questions that we have. And even if you're not an expert in fertility, and all you're doing is you have students in the yeshiva, you're going to come across information that has ramifications for their life. So the Torah says, "Lo tanua isha damito, v'yareitem elecha, ani Hashem, ki ani Hashem Elokechem." The Torah says, "Lo techashu, lo teshakru ish bamito." We shouldn't lie, we shouldn't cheat. Which the Mishnah Baba Metzia, nekach nisak b'shulchan aruch in the Choshen Mishpat says, "Ein mefarkasim v'lo et adam v'lo et beima v'lo et kelim." So if it was a beima and a kelim, meila v'lo et adam. We're not allowed to present somebody mefarkesis, to present something that it isn't. To say this is a Rolex and it's not a Rolex. Not to say this guy's healthy and he's not healthy. If someone asks you about a shidduch, I'm not allowed to say they're healthy. If someone's an evid, I'm not allowed to sell them as a healthy evid if I know they have an illness. Rabbi Moshe from Tshuva in Yordea says, "Ubeim kavanat tzviato." You're not allowed to cover up. I'm not allowed to paint. But if the reason they cover uloli yipui. That he should be accepted into a job. He can't get a job because he looks old, and so he wants to cover it up. So he paints it not because I want to be beautiful, not because I want to look something I'm not. I just want to get the job. This Moshe, on what condition? There's no honor. What would be the honor? That I'd be able to do that thing. I know that in fact I'm able to do the job. Why won't it take me? Because I look old. I got a white beard. I look old. I look zaken. However, if I have black, but I know that I can do the job. I know that I'm good as anybody else, as good as any young person. If that was the case, it's a motion, two conditions. That I'm not doing it in order to lie, and bad that I'm capable of doing the thing that was done. So that's an interesting tshuva that Rabbi Moshe says. It's an interesting cover. What do we say? That on a has to have kavana de lanot, and bad has to be that the totza'ah, that the result is also that I was money. Because at the end of the day, if I lied to you, but it was no totza'ah to that, it doesn't make a difference. I give you exactly I sell you, it's one thing and it's another item, but exactly the same quality, and they can do exactly the same job. There's not on us as Moshe. The Lechora, if I have somebody that has a particular situation that has no influence, maybe that's not on us. So a lot of the slides, and I'll send you the slides obviously in the end of the shir, a lot of the slides are taken from Sefer Pua. The Sefer Pua, we have a whole section speaking about Shidduchim and about what's sometimes. A lot of the slides are taken from that. And in Sefer Pua it says the following: what is the achrayus that a person has? A person has it's appropriate and is mechuyev, maybe is allowed to find out about the shidduch. In order to find out whether it's worth going on a date. And in addition, also to prevent nezek, damage, and gonna find out something like married to somebody, they're offended, they're a sex offender, they're a criminal, it would be nezek or mapach nefesh. I'd be upset. I thought the person was fertile and I found it infertile. I thought they were this age and another age. It has to be tachliti, memukad. You can't just ask everything. The Chavetz Chaim has a ara that he says someone comes to the city. He says, you from that city? Tell me about all the people in the city. So it's lashon hara. You can't ask about everybody in the city. I just want to speak to my person. We'll know what happened to Chaim. Toch shmi'a lichol lashon hara v'chiyus. You should only ask people that are trustworthy. People ask everybody, ask everybody shit. The person's not trustworthy. Zehirim b'divreihem. They're careful. Shemekirim d'adam shelav mevarim. They also know who's talking about. כשאדם מקבל מידע, now if you get information, צריך לדעת להבדיל בירור בין העובדות לבין הפרשנות של המספר. A lot of times when we hear Shidduchim, we hear בכלל a description of people's character. There's the uvdot, there's the facts, and there's the parshanut. Somebody told me, a friend of mine is a big Talmid Chacham, a größer Talmid Chacham, and he has a lazy eye. And his shidduch was made. He went out with his what is now his wife, and she was horrified. They were mishadachim with this guy. Looks like an idiot. He's got this lazy eye. Looks like he's all drooping off. And talking to him, he looks like he's falling asleep. But that uvda is he has a lazy eye. The parshanut was that there's something wrong with him. And Baruch Hashem, he's a big Talmid Chacham and a big tzaddik. It was very appropriate shidduch. I think they're very happy now. We also know to change from person to person. Exactly what are you telling me? Because you could say that it means a person's stupid, and at the end of the day, what it means is not the greatest going. For you, it's very appropriate. The other thing is that we all know as married couples, as married people, that there are certain things that before you're married are very, very important. And when you get married, especially when you're married for a long time, they become much less important, much less significant. It's also important. So people come to ask us about this person, that person. So, things sometimes the things that nourish God, they have to know important. Sometimes they're opposite. Things that were not important and have become important. The Mishnah, as we know, we already saw this already, says an old tall person should marry a tall woman. Let's have a very tall person. The Gemara already spoke about, Mishnah spoke about the problems of marrying someone who's going to end up with having children that will be inappropriate. And we spoke already about the different ways of passing on genetic material, if it's by recessive genes or by dominant genes or by X-linked genes. And we should know in addition that as a person gets older, a woman gets older, there's less chance of her getting pregnant and more chance of her miscarrying. And therefore, there's a lot of information that's important. There's also a lot of information that's not unimportant. To be a carrier of a genetic abnormality isn't an illness. But to be 45 years old is not an illness, but it's a very important condition if you're thinking about getting married and having children. And so there's a lot of information that we can find out. You often know the woman doesn't exactly say age. Well, I ask a woman, how old are you? 40 plus. So I say, plus how much? Plus 9 or plus a half? And if she doesn't tell me, I know it's more closer to 9 than plus a half. A woman's 49. The chances of her getting pregnant naturally are very, very, very small. So we know that people check. We spoke already about Dor Yesharim, and Rav Moshe came out against it, saying you're going to create Dor Mishpachas HaNechvim. We're going to have a lot of people who are inappropriate unless we have this number. And so Dor Yesharim we spoke about has an advantage and disadvantage. One of the advantages is that it's a closed. We don't get the answer. The disadvantage is that it's if I check Dor Yesharim, I don't always know the answer, but if I check through the Kuppah or I check through going to one of these companies that will do genetic testing, I now have information that I might have to share. I might have to now tell it. Let's say this example, BRCA. BRCA, a woman, if she went to Deutsche, they don't check BRCA. Why? Because there's no mashma'ut for getting married. It doesn't matter who you get married to. If you have BRCA, you have BRCA, you have BRCA. A woman in shul has BRCA. It's irrelevant who she's married to. I have a couple that came to me to counsel. They both have BRCA. It's irrelevant who they married. They're still going to have BRCA. My mashma'ut, what's the nafkamin of BRCA? We already spoke about it. BRCA increases the incidence of breast cancer from 12% to 75%. It increases the incidence of ovarian cancer from the 0.25% to 20 to 40%. There's increased chance of carrier for family members. If one girl has it, or even boy, but mostly girl, then we could also have another girl in her family has it. The woman finds out that information. Does she have to say? Well, I want to have a woman that I know has got an increase of 6 or 80% chance, 80 times more chance of getting ovarian cancer, 6 times more chance of getting breast cancer. Do I want that? Is a mekach told? If I'd have known, I would have been marry her. So let's talk a little bit about the halacha of the b'dikot, genetic testing and shidduchim. I just put this picture up because I love this picture. Because I know that this woman her whole life has been waiting to wear that shtreimel. She just, the whole life, she's like, when can I put on that shtreimel? Oh, well, that's why she got married. Now they can, they don't have to speak to each other again. The Shulchan Aruch and Even Ezer, very important Shulchan Aruch on this parsha says, "I'm a kadesh deisha manat she'ein ba mumim." It's Mishnah and Gemara, but there was in the Shulchan Aruch. When him su ba echad min mumim posnim benashim. A man, he marries it. Now this is very important. He marries it al manat she'ein la mumim. He doesn't want to. He says, "I want to marry you only if you're perfect, only if you don't have a mumim." When the Rabbonim, the Chasson came to him, or Bacher came to him, said, "I want to marry a woman that's perfect." He said, "You can't, it doesn't exist." So why? He said, "Because I already married her. My wife's perfect. Everybody else is not perfect." That's what the Gemara says. So therefore, the Zohar says that you should look at all the other women like they're monkeys. So every other woman is not perfect. My wife's perfect. But anyway, he marries her. He wants to be perfect. But if and she has a mum, and one of the Muslim that's pasul, ain't a mekudesh. It's mekach told. Because he married Almanat. If I bought something Almanat that it's a Ferrari and it ends up to be a Honda, so it's a mekach told. I bought it was a Ferrari. Now it turns out to be something else. She has another mum, not the mum that we're going to see in a moment. If she has a mum that's not for sale, that's not considered by Chazal to be a mum benashim, then it's, even though he says, "I hate it, I can't have it, I can't stand it," she's mukudeshet. He can divorce. He can get he has to give a ketubah, but it's not mekach tos. Says Gemara, "My mumim apostim b'konim." But it says Gemara, it's all of mumim apostim b'konim, postim b'nashim. Anything that by a kohen is a pagam is also by a ishak pagam. What are the things? V'yotelem b'nashim. Recha. So by kohanim, we know that they have a good ba'ayin, they have connected eye, they have a connected eyebrow, they have a loving ba'ayin, etc., etc. All the things that the Mishnah tells us. But here, in addition, by nashim, recha, she smells. V'zeya, she sweats. V'recha peh, she has halitosis, she has smelly peh. V'yeshem yafrecha chotem, she also has other smell from the other places. V'kol she has a deep voice. With the gasim, mechavotea tefach, that has very large breasts. The tefach ben dabadat, she has a distance between the breasts. And the shichav kelev, when asama comes seleket, she has a terrible scar. The veshuma, she has a virua, she has a varicose, a growth. Shala padachat on her forehead. There's a wart on her forehead. The filo itakta bit even is small. V'afal pi she'em basear, even if there's no hair. This is what a woman is more than a kohanim. If it's underneath her hat, she has underneath her kisarosh, she has a wart, a very unsightly wart. If it's always seen, if it's always seen, then you saw it all for it. So you can marry her within the year. So if you saw her and you saw she had a wart, and you married her, then it pass. But if it's never seen, it's not a mum. So if it's under the hair, no one ever sees it. So no, what she has under that you're never gonna see. If it's seen and you could have seen it before you got married, so then you were pious. Then we say you saw it and a kol beseder. The question that we have, if it's nireit velo nireit, something see, some not seen. So she during the shidduch, during the date, she covered it over, and now you get married, she pulled back a hand, and you can see gevaltjes. It's a horrible word. I don't like it. So those are the things you see. Says the Ramo, and if there's a bathhouse in the town, then if he comes back and says, but she's got a mum underneath her clothing on her leg, it's horrible, she's only got one leg, or she's got a terrible scar on her back. But then we say, why? Because the women go to the bathhouse naked and in light. A woman that the places that they don't go to the bathhouse, they only go and it's dark and they can't be seen. Then we can say what's the word? The word is that if we say that it was revealed, what would happen? He sent someone to go and see it. Send my sister or my mother or my cousin to go and check out this woman when she goes to the bathhouse. See, what does she look like naked? If she looks horrible, then what they will say is not good. If you what's the Rama saying? If you could have checked it out and you didn't check it out, you should have checked it out. If you did check it out and it was unseeable, and therefore now it's mekach taut. Continues the Rama, therefore nichveh, she has epilepsy. If it happens every Wednesday afternoon, why? What does she do on Wednesday afternoon? She goes inside. She's not stupid. Every time she has an epileptic attack, she goes inside the house. She's not just no can see her. If it can come anytime, she had epilepsy, she had an attack and no one ever saw her. And therefore,
I hope I'm not stealing the Rav's thunder here, but I think what the Chiddush here could be as well is that the Chatan's sister or mother has permission to tell him that she has this mum in the bathhouse.
I think what the Gemara says even more than that. He sent them to see it. He sent them to see it. That's a pshat Gemara.
Right. And that the person has permission to tell him what
he has to do a birur. I have to check it out. So if I can't check it out, I'm without going to check it out. How do I check it? I can't go. I can't see her naked, but you can see naked in the bathhouse.
Yeah, the other person has a responsibility to tell him. That's what the boss code will be in the community. I think.
Okay. I think. Tov, Shirayafa. I think the pshat Gemara is that she sent it to see. And it's the mechuyev. A person has to check it out. So we said before, otherwise it'll be nekato. Things that can't be seen. That she has a epilepsy. She has a rechape. We can't see it. So what do we see? So Shelai Tova, exactly how to understand it. I think my interpretation is what I understood from the Gemara. Is that you have an obligation to go and find it out. You have the obligation to go and find out if she's Tova lo Tova. And that if it's something that couldn't be seen and you didn't, and you saw it or you didn't check it out, okay, and you savev a couple, you saw it, you liked it, then afterwards you can't say mekatot. You can say, now I thought I could live with it, now it's horrible. I thought that it wasn't so terrible, now it's horrible. So that you can get divorced, but it's not mekatot. But if you couldn't have checked it out, so a person has a genetic abnormality, you can't see they have BRCA, and you couldn't check it out because they haven't been tested, or there's no way to ask anybody. So then you could say it's mekach taut. That's the Chordi idea. Zibelshin says in the Sefer Birkat Bracha Avram, B'nei zug shenisu v'nibarer she'achad mehem noseh machalat torashtit. One of them has a genetic abnormality. V'yavilu lam yiladim shotim. It's going to have kids who will be sick. Mistaber she'ilu hasheni yada zot mirosh lo haya miskim lenisuin. It makes sense that he wouldn't have agreed to get married. V'lachen kiddushin b'telim yisodam v'dim mekach taut. He says more than it's that they're allowed to get divorced. If they continue being married, they're living without chuppah v'kiddushin because that chipur v'kiddushin was muvata because it was mekach taut. If there's a dominant genetic abnormality, 50% chance that they have sick kids. יש לחוש למקח טעות, מסתבר שאם שאדם יסרב לשאת בן זוג כשקיים סיכון גבוה כזה. I wouldn't get married to him if I knew there was such a high chance. וכסיכון נמוך צריך עיון, ייתכן שאין זה מקח טעות, שגם בני אדם בריאים, אין ביטחון מוחלט שילדיהם יוולדו בהם. זה says of the Yitzhak position, it's a ודאי זה מקח טעות. 50% also מקח טעות. Less than 50%, there's a shaladun, but maybe we don't know everybody if it's any person there's a potential that it could have sick kids. However, he says yesh ladun, doesn't say that it's mutar. That's the thing that we just saw. The Torah says, "Lo telech rachil b'amecha, lo tamad adam re'echa ani Hashem." Says the Netziv. V'od nechlal b'smichut hazarot. Why is it next to lo telech rachil b'amecha? Next to lo tamad adam re'echa. שאף על גב שהזרה לא תלך רכיל, מכל מקום לא תעמוד אדם ברכב. אני יודע שאיש אחד רוצה לרד לחייו של אדם אחר, you know that someone's going to cause someone terrible damage, הרי זה מחויב להודיע. It's not a problem of לשון הרע. You have to tell them, אסור לעמוד אדם ברכב. So the Cherkes Yaakov, the Legos, they asked about whether a Rofeh, Haredi, that he knows that there's a boy that was chole with cancer. Well, they don't know about it. He asked, no, can he reveal that information to the family? They don't even know about it. They don't give for a year or 2 years. She doesn't want to marry someone who's sick. She's not going to marry him if she's going to live for a year or 2. Or maybe because they shev al taseh. Because man shalom nishal al zeh, lo avi bichlal yatznura. Yatznura, you asked you, then I can't lie. But I don't have to menadev the information. I have to go and offer that information. The people that they could have asked me, didn't ask me. No bad. It doesn't have to go back and to give that use. So the Chazal Yaakov was done with it. Lo kol ma shemashene kerega. I know information. Do I have to say it? Don't have to say it. Maybe I have to say it. Shev al taseh. They wanted to come to me. They could ask me. The difference between a doctor and a Rav is that a doctor, clearly I know that they know medical information. Now, I meant as a Rav, I know medical information. That maybe the doctor doesn't know. The person never went to a doctor. I know that the woman has endometriosis. The dogma we said before. I know that because she told me, because I was in the course and I understand if she has very heavy periods and she has pain, it's a very good chance. Maybe I don't know 100%, but I know there's a good chance. They wouldn't ask me. I wouldn't go to the Rav and say, what medical information do you know? You know this person? They're a good person? Yeah, they're a good person. We spoke last week about the case of the woman who the woman who was born from sperm donor, and the Rav said you have to say it on Shidduchim. That's something you couldn't know before. So he said, so I said to the Rabbi, you have to say the sperm. No, if someone asks me, it's a good Shidduch, I'd say no, I don't say why. So that's the shade. The Sitz Eliezer says, the doctor reveals information. He can lose his license. If he has to say, he has to write information. That's not a question. There's a chok. You have to say. Doesn't have to. It's not here about information. Talking about here about resuscitating the patient or not resuscitating the patient. So the Sitz Eliezer says, once there's the Chok Medina, once the country, there's a law in the land that you have to do one thing. Let's give an example. I know that a person was a sex offender. They came to me, they told me. In Israel, I don't know what is necessarily the case in all the countries, in all the states you live in, but in Israel, I'm mechuyev as a professional to tell that information to the police. I have to give that to the authorities. So if someone asks me about that person, l'chora, I have to say, if there's an authority, I have to say it's a chok medina. So when he says lo tadam damon dormecha, there's a chok. Chok you have to tell. You have to say. I can't lose my license. Within, therefore, like revealing him in shidduchim, we have to think there's 3 things that are important. What's kodem called thought as a mekach taut, and what's called a thought of a mekach taut. When we say what is considered mekach taut, it's a very personal understanding of what would people want and not want. And then that's dependent on the chevra. It changes from society to society. In one society, we can say that if it's not 100% perfect, so then it's considered mekach taut. The person has epilepsy, we said before, or a person has diabetes. In certain chevra, the chevra, that's a very chassidish chevra, that would be considered to be a taut. To be born from sperm donor, that would be considered to be mekach taut. I wouldn't want such a child. But another chevra, in a chevra that's maybe a little bit more modern, having diabetes, and so the person takes medication. No kaklum, being born from a sperm donor, it was beheter, lechos mutar. So it very much depends on the chevra. It also changes. It's a dynamic answer. It's mishtaneh. It changes from place to place. It changes from time to time. So in Yerushalayim, 50 years ago, having diabetes was considered definitely a mum. I think today, I would say, b'kol hakavod, that today is a bit pachot. It's not so much a mum that it was in the past, because we're able to treat it. And we saw that people don't die mostly from diabetes. So when I say what's considered mekach tot, it's not what I think mekach tot. It's what I think that person would think is mekach tot. As the Chavetz Chaim says, Lashon Hara isn't what I would want said about me. It's what I would say about me if I was in their situation. So what would that person want? Would that person consider that to be mekach tot or not mekach tot? So if I know that person that person isn't so worried about if the person takes medication, so it's not such a terrible thing on me either. They have a person that for them that would be in their society in their time that would be considered to be a terrible thing to be a carrier of a genetic disease, like we saw in the Tshuvas of Moshe, that to be a carrier is considered to be a mum. If that's the case, then it's mekach tot. So we have to understand that the concept of mekach tot is not a specific context. That it changes mizman lazman. There are certain things that are clearly mekach tot, and it's a pelechem sipur. A woman calls me up from England, and she says, "My daughter was born without a uterus." Okay, it's very sad. What? And she says, when during the shidduch, when do we have to say to the bacher that she doesn't have a uterus? It's not saying, but that's a kind of important information. So she said, "No, you don't understand, Rabbi. The vort is tonight. When do we have to tell the chassan?" So the face of this monkey, that's basically the face that I had. And when I've told it to many rabbonim and many groups, I can't see you all here because people here are not. I don't see the camera, but I'm sure that people saw that they would say that's bemet. That's vaday mekach tot. Lo yachol liot that a woman wouldn't have a uterus, that someone would say that's normal. So lo yachol liot. That's clearly mekach tot. Chavetz Chaim says, if you look at the end of the Chavetz Chaim, so he has stories or situations of how we explain what's Lashon Hara and what's Rechilus, and then one of them speaks about Shidduchim. It's Sios Shlishi. So if the chisaron is that he's sick in his body, he's got an illness, he's got an internal disease, he's a genetic carrier. The Chavetz Chaim didn't say genetic carrier because we know about genetic carriers in time of Chavetz Chaim. Aval naniach, it's the same din lechoyre. Asher lo nigla lekol, no one can see it. Pashut hu she'ein ala megale inyan ze chashash rechilut. That's not necessarily rechilut. I know that this person carries this genetic abnormality. I know that this woman has BRCA. I know that this guy has a dominant genetic abnormality. I know that his father has Huntington's, and therefore there's a 50% chance that he has Huntington's, and therefore there's a 50% chance that his children have Huntington's. Says the Chavetz Chaim, not only do I have to say even if they don't ask me, after not have the information. A little different than we saw before with the question of Rabbi. We can say two terutzim. Either Rabbi is chalek on the Chavetz Chaim, it's possible. The other possibility is, here I know there's a situation. There he had this cancer. I don't know if it's going to be sick. It's not going to be sick. I don't know whether it's going to affect him now or not affect him now. But here I know that there's a problem. I know this woman has BRCA, 100%, and he had it. So in that case, the Chora says the Chavetz Chaim, that's all I get it. You have to say it. And therefore, says the Chavetz Chaim, therefore, tzila sim lev to certain pratim. She barets lo etzela mitchila ki devar ze bichlal cholei guf. Because I have to see if he's really sick. The fuki muchalush betivo, he's a little bit weak. Eino bichlal cholei. Shelo yagdil et ha'inyan machala yoter mimashu. You shouldn't say more than it is. I can't say more than this. A BRCA, there's an increased chance. But if you looked at the numbers, there's still most chance that a person won't get those disease. And if they get disease, not talking about getting disease when they're 20. So they might get disease when they're in their 70s. So we have to say what it is exactly. I have to say what is the advantage, the to'elet of the mechutan. And not because I hate this chassan. He's a horrible person. He once took my seat in shul. He once didn't mechabed me. And he was a talker the whole time. I can't stand him. So for that I'm going to say. Says the Chavetz Chaim is another idea. What's going to come out of it? What the worst thing is they go to Shidduch anyway. I told it that was going to happen. It's going to be the back of her mind that she knew that he had a problem, and now that they have a fight, they have a disagreement about who's gonna put the dishes in the dishwasher. So it's gonna come up. I knew you were good for nothing, and the rabbi told me, and I should have listened to him. So that's a terrible thing to live with that. I had a case last week that a woman calls me up and she says, I'm married 6 months and I'm pregnant and I want to do an abortion and we're getting divorced. So the whole thing was a horrible, horrific situation. So I said to her, what happened? She said, I was stupid. I didn't listen to my parents. That they told me not to get married and I didn't listen to them, and I'm getting divorced and I'm pregnant. So that's terrible to be in that shidduch and to understand I could have, I should listen to you, but I didn't. That's a terrible thing. That's very, very destructive. A woman told me that they're married already many years, and they have he has a very serious problem, which was solved by sperm donor, which we spoke about 2 weeks ago. And she told me sometime after that when she was very young when they got married, a Hasidic family, and they said everything's going to be okay. She said, I was stupid. I didn't listen. I should have checked it out, and I didn't check it out. And I, as we say in Hebrew, I'm suffering from this idea that I didn't check it out. So we have to be careful. If the end of the day, a person's going to get married anyway, and I told the information, and they don't listen to it anyway, that's the worst thing. Because says that the Chavetz Chaim, it's only before they went to Shidduch. Don't say anything. After they went out, and then already you can say, okay, he was Mekabel. We see they're going out. So that question, what do I mean Nishtadech, we're going to speak about a little bit later, because Nishtadech, and they went out, doesn't necessarily mean they went out once. It means that already, we can imagine, you already went on a shidduch, that was, you went out once, twice, that was it, you got married. So it already means that they go to the point that they're already almost at the forge. As the woman said before, tonight's the forge. That's already mishtadich. But beyond that, it's dinach. So it's a very fascinating Gemara, that I'm sure we all know in Gemara in Yevamos, in Daf Mem Hey. And what else? This is the following story. How did I cut to the Mavrav? A woman, a guy, an alman comes to before Rav, and he asks him a question. If we have a goy who and an eved who had relations with a bat Israel, what's the din of the child that's born? Father's a goy or an eved goy, and the mother's a Jew. What's the din? I'm already not kasher. No, we know matrilineal descent. We know that the mother's a Jewish, then the child's Jewish. Come on. So I'm born from that. My mother's a Jew and my father's a goy. Havli Bardech, give me your daughter. He said, I'm not going to give it to you. Why? Says Rashi Bachil Rav after he hears his story. The Rav says he's kasher, but he still won't give him a shidduch for the daughter. People are going to say, the gamal, the camel dances in its own circle. What do you mean? And here's the kav, and here's the gamal, and it's not dancing. What is it saying? That we know that it's a full circle. That if you said she's kasher, that he's bemet kasher. That if he was kasher, you would have given him a daughter. And since you didn't give him a daughter, what are you basically saying? He's not kasher. So how can you say he's kasher? Lo mavin the tshuva. Amar havik Yeshua ben Nun lo mavin lo. Says Rav, even if it was like Yeshua ben Nun, he was a tzaddik, and he was a Talmid Chacham, I wouldn't give him my daughter. Amar lei says Shimon bar Chia to Rav, havik Yeshua ben Nun, imar lo hivlei achrina hivlei. If he was like Yeshua ben Nun, if you wouldn't get married, he'd find a shidduch somewhere else. He's still there. Aval hi, this guy that he's not Yeshua ben Nun, imar lo hivlei achrina lo hivlei. If you don't get married, no one else is going to get married to him. So says Shimon bar Chia to Rav, you just buried this guy. Because on the one hand, he said he's kasher. If you tell me he's treif, he marry a goy. He's a goy. But if you tell me he's a yid, and yet everybody's going to know, the Rav said he's kasher. The Rav also said he's not good enough for me. He's not shidduch for me. If that's the case, no one's going to want to marry him. If he was a huge tzaddik and a Talmid Chacham, maybe we get married. But he's not. And now you've kavalt אותו. There's nothing you can do with it. Rav Man also said he's mutter. The same person then comes to Rav Yehuda. So what do I do? Rav says I'm kasher, but he won't give me his daughter. I know his daughter. She's a wonderful girl. She's balat chesed, and she's thin and beautiful. Tov. Why can't marry her? Amar leizil itmar. Go disappear. Inasiv or nasiv baminach, or marry someone that's like you. Amar le or gali or nasiv baminach. Either go galut, either go to somewhere else. Marry someone like you. What's that? Itmar, you'll be sort of disappear. Don't sell information. So says the Stipler, how do we help? How does that help him? He's going to go somewhere else. What's he going to say? He's not going to say that his father's a goy. It's not going to come out. It's going to come out. And then we have exactly the same shayla. And the shayla is going to be, how can he marry? How can he say that he's kasher is not kasher? If he was kasher, go back to Rav. So why didn't marry? What does it help to go somewhere else? What does it help to be mitma? What does it help that if he marries someone like him who's also the father's a goy? We did a shidduch, and they both have the same problem. But if at the end of the day he goes somewhere else, and how's that going to help him? The Stipler, based on a Stipler, says the word nifla. Mutar lahonot says the Stipler. This is muibud of what the Stipler says. Be'iskei shidduchim b'der shel hastarat mita. We're allowed not to reveal information. This guy, how is going to go Gali? He's going to go somewhere else. He's not going to say my father's a goy. The case was guy had one testicle and lost the other one in an operation. The Firova poskim. The Chassan Sofer says there in Even Ezer in Pitrei Tshuva brings a Chassan Sofer that says he has to say that. Even though he's kasher l'rova poskim, yes poskim she'asur lavo b'kal when it's got one testicle, and therefore there's people in the makpid. So he says, and he says, "V'gam shelo siper al kach le'meshudech nimo." How can it not be mekach? It's v'day mekach. He knows he has one testicle, and he knows that people are poiser. He knows people that's osir that he's asur lavo b'kal. How can it not be mekach? So says the Stipler advar atzum v'rav in psychology of human beings. Omnam b'mekach umemka amoiche devar machal she'asur b'achila afilu m'darabonon. If I sold you something that's afilu d'rabonon, it's asur. So it's basar v'chalav, that it's lo batel b'shishim, but it's more than roiv. Or we have something that's ma'aser sheni, that is asur lechol et ze michutz Yerushalayim. So it's asur lechora, but we still say it's asur. Well, how's it mekach taut? Mipnei shehakoneh eino rotzeh dafka damotza musiyam. I don't want this apple. I don't want this watch. I don't want this car. What do I want? I want a thing. I want a car that's worth this amount. I don't want this Lexus. I want a Lexus. I don't want this Rolex. I want a Rolex. I'm not nowhere on this one. לעומת זה בשידוכים, בני זוג מחליטים לנשא דווקא לבן זוג שבו בחרו והוא מצא חן ביניהם. Says a Stipler, Shidduch is not just I'm buying a woman. I'm getting this woman. I want Rachel, and I want Sarah. So I don't want someone who's like Sarah. I want Sarah, and therefore, once he's already made the connection with that person, and in the end they find out later that there was a problem, that's not mekach tautz. Why? Because he wanted me with all my faults. He wanted me as I am. If it was bemed a bayama mashkasha, the guy had no testicles, then bemed would be mekach tautz. Because I don't want only chaim, I want children. That I'm not going to have. The woman doesn't have a uterus. I'm not going to have children. Okay. However, if there's a pagam like this guy who is far as a goy, and yesh deot that it's asur, however, we're matir. So in such a case, no mekach taut. Why is it not mekach taut? Because in the end of the day, the thinking of how I work, how it will be, is that I want that person, and that person is a good person. They have faults. Nachon, they have faults. That's not mekach taut. So therefore, the Stipler. Now you can take the Stipler to great lengths and say even if it doesn't have uterus, it would be the same thing. Avanosim kacha. We can say that the Stipler's din is therefore that we don't have to say all the information a bit up front because we want to make a connection. Once we made that human connection, then we can reveal the thoughts. And that's what Rav Zilbershin said when he met us in Machon Puah, and it's quoted in Sefer Puah. Yesh legalot tefer lechazot tefachayim. ולשאול, לספר לשואל רק פחתים חלקיים. You don't have to say everything. You have to say a little bit. You have to say it in Rashi Prakim. You have to say it in code. If he wants to know what is it, I have a PCO. What is it? Go and find it out. אבל הנשאל, או בצורות אחרות, או אצל הנשאל, או בצורות אחרות. You can ask me, you want to know more, ask more. You can Google it. ואם תחליט להתעלם מפרטים אלה, if they decide to ignore it, זה סבבה וכבל. So therefore, says the Zilberstein, that the whole point is that I don't have to say up front every single piece of information. Let's talk about the Meshudach themselves, person who themselves are sick. I have to say Rashi Prakim, have to say Pratim Chilkim, Megale Tefach and Mechazet Tefachayim. But I need to give information that the person knows that if they want to, that if they want to find out more, so I'm willing to tell them more information, but I'm tell them up front. In Sefer Pur it says, it doesn't, the couple are fine with it, but the family may have the problem. Not something, again, that the person, if they knew about it, they're young and they're in love and they get over it, they can't think about it. So that's it. But there was something that the family doesn't want. They want a Sephardi. Low to the Sephardi. They want it to be Ashkenazi. We were sitting in the Shabbat. We just had a Shabbat Pua, a wonderful Shabbat with the staff. So we're sitting with a couple of Sephardim. And she said that she's a Sephardi. I can't imagine how you could have a couple who are Ashkenazi and Sephardi marrying each other. So my friend of day that we have a daughter is married to a Sephardi. A son-in-law that's such a tzaddik like my son-in-law. But if brothers are family, that he's a Bal Tshuva, it doesn't mean brother couple. They said again, the brothers that he's a carrier of a genetic abnormality. It doesn't mean mafrilin. Then you don't have to tell the family. However, Miuda says the Pitchei Tshuva brings in Orach Chaim, Kol Sifrei HaMuslim marishim olam alevon lashon hara. ואני מריש עולם להפך. הבון גדול מזה, והוא גם מצוי יותר. It's more than lashon hara, worse. ומניעת עצמו לדבר במקום שצריך להציל השוק מיד ראשו. I'm doing for the neshak, for the person that was cheated and was stolen and they lied to them. Like the woman told me, had I known, I would never marry that person. I spoke to a family from, and the husband is a tzaddik and bemet. But he has a very serious illness, and his wife told me that if she'd have known b'chayim, she would never get married to him. B'chayim, she would never get married to him. So she's a shuk. It ended up being that I think the illness that he didn't know before either. I think he would have sold it, but she says, "I do that lo timidchatet." After, v'chaim binyan shidduch v'hu yodeh shu ish ra ublial v'ra litchaten imo kulam bichlal hashavat gufo mamon. So we have to think when we think about shikul. Do I say? Do I not say? On the one hand, we have lashon hara, but says the Pitchei Tshuva. There's a much worse thing, which is lashon ketayshuk. That's worse, and it's much more matzoi that we. I call you beseder. Had a young man here, not so young, that he came and he's already older bocher, and he's going out with a woman that is not so attracted to her. She's a little bit overweight. It's not what he wanted, was it? So we're talking, and it seemed that it was. I can argue whatever I want, but for him it was important. So he said many people told him after the weddings istader. I said zelo istader. If you're not attracted to her, zelo istader. You could be more attracted to her. But you can't say that idea that we sort of as one and say just get married and kol there is not true. There are certain things. There's certain things that are straight that we know it's not important. There's certain things that we can't ignore that. Says the Rabbi v'mo'eh she'echad רוצה להשתדך עם אחד. וידוע לרועה הזה, כי החתן הזה יש לו חסרונות עצומים. החתן אין יודע מזה דבר, ואילו היה יודע לא היה מתעשה לזה, יש לגלות. When he doesn't know, you have to tell him. בן אדם בטוח שבין כה וכה דבריו לא יתקבלו, פטור מלספר. If you know they're going to get married anyway, אל תגיד כלום. Don't say anything. מה זה יעזור? Says there in the Zahara in Sefer Pur says the following. The סברה הפשוטה היא שהצורך לספר גדול יותר כשאדם נשאל, מאשר אינו נשאל. סברה, it makes sense, and if you asked, you have to say, no, don't say. שאז הוא צריך בעצמו לזום את הסיפור דבר. And Rav Nebenzahl wrote Haran, he said the following, מעשה היה בישיבת הכותל לפני עשרות שנים, שבחור נטפל עליו דתו, went crazy, רחמן ליצלן, וירה ברב הדרי שליטה. בסייעתא דשמיא הכדור היה עקר, והרב לא נצוק, אבל הבחור נלקח לאשפוז, the guy was taken into a mental institution, שאלתי את הרב שלמה זלמן, אם ישחרר הבחור ויציל לו שידוך, האם עליי לספר מה שקרה? Says Rav Nimitz, I was there, I saw it, I have to tell him? I have to tell the woman? אמר לי, שאם ישאלו לי עליי לספר, you have to tell. ואם לא, לא ישאלו, לא, they didn't ask you, they say the guy knows everything about him, he says he's crazy, he wants to shoot the Rosh Yeshiva. You don't say that, doesn't ask him, you have to say. אבל אמר שאין יודע על מסמך מה הוא פוסק ככה. I don't know what the מקור is, אבל ככה, ספרה פשוטה. The person can say, if you want to ask, you have to ask him, don't ask. So that's something that maybe now he's been treated, it's not important for him. There's certain things that are worse than that. Says the Sitzelier, klal gadol ma'od, is something that we should ma'amed bichlal. עדיף לשכנע את הצד השני שיש, צד שיש בו פגם, לספר מעצמו את הבעיות לצד השני. The best thing is, they should tell. Get the other side to tell. You have a problem, a woman, like we had the case that we started at the beginning with endometriosis, a woman comes to you, and she tells you, I have endometriosis, what should I do? So the best thing, says the Sitzelier, I encourage her that she should tell. Say, tell him, Beklali, tell him you have a problem. If he wants to explain, you can come to me and we can explain it. We can look at it together. It's not necessarily end of the shidduch.
At what point, though, does he have to disclose that?
Oh, so Shalat Tova, we're going to get to that in a moment. Okay, so let's think the Maisa, what do we do? So let's divide three situations, and I think it brings together many of the things that we've learned in the past few weeks. The first situation that we have a disease or a medical situation, not necessarily a disease, but a medical situation, that a person would not be prepared to marry them if they knew. We'll give a few examples. Rokitansky spoke about last week. A woman's born without a uterus, like the woman in London, without a uterus. That's clear that that's mekach taut. That's you have to tell. Otherwise, mekach taut. A woman's born with Turner syndrome, that she has no ovaries and she has to have egg donation. That's clear that it's mekach taut. Kleinfelter, man's born with XXY, that we know that there's a very, very, very good chance that he's not going to be able to get pregnant naturally. A guy had cancer treatment, things that is a good chance that it affected the fertility. In such cases, you have to tell. Otherwise, that's mekach taut. That a woman come back later and say, he didn't tell me I have Kleinfelter, mekach taut. He has to, Dubai has to go. And if she has Rokitansky didn't tell, she would say, it's pashut, that's pashut. Okay. The second situation is a significant medical situation. So, it's got a little bit messed up here. So I'll give you an example, undescended the testicles. So same medical situation. We have now, I told you, a bacha that we're dealing with, that he has undescended testicles and he's now in his 20s and they were undescended. So that's a problem. I don't know why it became messed up here, the signs here. A person has, but let's see this, yeah, we'll come back to what it's supposed to look like. Oh, is better? Yeah. Okay, so can we see this now? Can you see the slide? Hello? Anybody there? Nobody? Oh,
yes.
You can see it?
Yes.
All right. So a person has undescended testicles, one testicle, epilepsy that's controlled by taking medication, BRCA or late onset disease. The person has a disease that definitely or may express itself later on. So you have to tell. But if not, it's not a mekach taut. Why? Because it's a medical situation. You can't say that I would never marry a person that doesn't have one testicle. No, they're perfectly kasher. I wouldn't marry if I didn't know that they took medication for epilepsy. Says Rav Eliyahu when to tell. And there was someone said before, when should we tell? So Rav Eliyahu said a good klal is misheviu shlish. What's misheviu shlish? Misheviu shlish means that if we say how many times do people generally go out in this community, we said it's communal. So in this community, how often do people go out before they get married, before they get engaged? So in community A or B, they go out 3 times. In which case you say after the first date, if you're shlish, it's already, if they're going to go on a second date, it's already came out, they're almost engaged. If in a particular place you go out for 3 months, so the first month you don't say like it. After the first month, then you have to say. So it's whatever the shlish. You don't have to tell it the first. You can't wait until it's already so significant that it's nigmar. This is view shlish, and that's the chorah ties in with what we saw before in the stipler. Why? Because after shlish already, if you go out once or twice, let's say you're in a place in which people go out 3 months before they get engaged, and so they go out for a couple of weeks. It's shum bad. It's klum. That doesn't mean anything. We're still smelling. We're still tasting the waters. They're testing the waters. However, if we're already going out beyond a month, which is already now significant, that's like we're already now an item. We're willing to come together in shul and to speak to each other in the kiddush. So then already it's already serious. We're saying that we're thinking of moving forward. Then already you can say, okay, there's a gel. There's already an attraction. Otherwise we won't go out again. However, this is not a time to say after shlish. I think it's a good klal. Say at that point. So it's at the fourth. And the third are common conditions that the ramifications are less serious. PCO. Do we have to say, varicocele, what we spoke about, genetics, unclear genetic disease, so a disease in which we have as a sheila, a siman sheila, or in which we don't know the ramifications, or it's not so clear what the ramifications are. So varicocele we know about. Is it a chovat to tell? We already spoke about this when we spoke about varicocele. We spoke about that meeting with Rav Yaakov Ariel, in which we can say exactly how much do we say they have to meet, you don't have to meet, how much if they do b'dika, don't have to b'dika, they say no. So in this case, we would say that in such a case that it's a common condition that the ramifications are less serious. Definitely, there's not a chovat to tell. However, we would say that there's still a good. It's recommended to tell him. Go back to the Tzitz Eliezer. The Tzitz Eliezer said that we should encourage that person to say. How do we divide? What's kover? What decides whether this is mekach tov or not? Whether this is something that needs to be said or not? Kamuti, the percentage of people that's a problem. Miut hamatzui, 10% is a problem. 10% of the people who have a varicocele have a problem. We know that it's more than 10%. What people are makpid? If there's a difference between different communities, between migzarim, is it that Haredi are more makpid and Datilumi less makpid? If you're ben bayah, it's a gever, it's a isha. It's a problem it's more a problem for a woman, more problem for a man. More if it's a problem, it's a woman. So then the chora he's any shala purivya. On the other hand, if it's a man, it's not metafket. These are shelot that I don't think are so clear that we have an answer for those cases. So the Rambam says the following. שלוש הסכימו עליו בני מדינה, שהוא מום שמחזיר בו מקח, זה מחזירים. וכל שהסכימו עליו שאין מום, הרי זה אינו מחזיר בו, אלא אם פרש. If it's something that everybody agrees that it's din a mechira, meka, then if it's everybody agrees that this is a meka, that this is a mum, then you have to mahzir. If it's a thing that's not maskim, any came was perish. We said I want only this thing. It's I don't want this particular item, and it wasn't. Shekol no 7 or 10 stam al minhag midna somech. Why? Because I'm somech al minhag medina. Rav Zibushin said, listen to the Rambam. Lo rabbonim or rofim kavim ela tzibur. What's koveh isn't what the rabbonim think is the problem, or what the doctors think is the problem. It's what the tzibur thinks is the problem, and it could be lekan or lekan. The tzibur might think that having a genetic abnormality is terrible. But the doctors always have if you're a carrier, it's assumed about it doesn't matter. Or it could be meidach, having a particular condition that the doctors might think is very serious, having a heart palpitations. Simple thing. It's everybody has a heart palpitations. So the kover and what's considered mekach tov or not mekach tov, what's considered to be normal, not normal, is it tzibur? What in your tzibur is considered to be normal? As it's not always so pashut. But I was thinking, this is now the lamaisa. What I would give as a hatzah to people who ask me is that even though in these more common and less serious conditions, they may be not chovat to tell, and maybe we could say it's definitely not mekach tov. And if you got married and say that it's not a mekach tov. However, it's very smart to tell. And it would make a lot of sense that we get into a marriage in which we tell the truth. We don't have to go through a lie detector. We don't have to be, every single thing has to be mifran. Because remember that when we're building a marriage, we want a marriage to be built on them, on us. We want a marriage to be built on that we can trust each other. And in another hour, I have a share for Madruchei Chatanim. We're going to speak about Ne'emanut Isha. That a woman, if she says, I'm Tamea, you're Tamea. And I want to say, one of the things I want to say in the shir is that we understand that the ikaron that the Torah is giving us, and the Chachamim are giving us, and Allah is giving us, is that we need to build our families on that we can trust each other. I can trust each other that you're not going to run off with someone. I trust others that you're not stealing the money. I can trust others that you said your Torah. And so I want to trust you. And so makes a lot of sense that before we make a decision to marry that person, there's an honesty between us. It doesn't mean you have to say every single thing. If a person, a young man, was exposed to pornography, and he masturbates, I don't think he needs to tell that in the shidduch. Why? Because for men, they'll say, okay, that's a condition that's very common among Bachrei Yeshiva. For women to hear a man masturbates and he saw pornography, that's yareg v'al yavo. That's impossible. Lo yachol liyot that a person can be a frum person and can have done that in the past once. Lo yachol liyot. So you don't have to say every single thing, but there's certain ikari things that a person has. Not every single dream and every hope and every avera ever did, but a person has certain things. That a person has a scar. I have a friend has a very unsightly scar. So we went to the beach once and I saw it. I don't know if his wife sent him to the bathhouse before with her brother to check him out. I hope that when he got married, he told her it's not pogebo, the guy's perfectly fine. It's unpleasant to see. So that's something you should say at some point. And the question is when? Do we do it now or do it later? And it's very much communal, as you said. It's very much depends on what is your tzibur, what's the norm. But it should be at some point. At some point, you should say, there will be a time which I will tell the information. Be honest about the age, about your fertility, about your history. There's things that are important, things to know. I think that if we look at different gishot in different chevrot, we can see some say, "Lam lo seper kol." You have to tell everything. The kala takes Ritalin. She said, we have to say every single thing we have to say. That's one gisha. Rab Zuba's thing we saw, say a little bit, we don't tell everything. Some say the chovat be'uz al hatzad hashani. They have to go and find out. I'm not going to volunteer any information. And only what they ask, I'm going to say about it. It can be very, very, very low key. There's another gisha that the chashashu katzer karchon. The problem is that we think it's the tip of the iceberg. I.e., if she tells me that she has a slightly irregular period, it really means that she's completely infertile. If she tells me she's 40 plus, it really means she's 58. And to think that this beginning, if a little bit beginning, so then people have a chashash. Again, it's not good to live in a chashash. I think it's very important to have the proper perspective. The perspective and the chonah to look and to say, what is the proper perspective that we have on our outlook on what is important, what's not important. And I think I told you that a shadchanit told me that a bacher came to him and he said, I want a woman who's thin and has yirat shamayim. And the kala teacher says that the color teacher says that when I look for the shidduch, can I swap it over? Can I say first of all she's yirat shamayim and then thin? Thin is important when you're 20. When you're older, maybe thin is not so important. So look at proper perspective. This person takes medication. They're a perfectly normal person. Setting them all. And lots of people who are good people take medication. The other things we have a opportunity. We have a service in the Machon that we can treat. We can meet together and we can explain to the one side what is the ramifications of the thing you have. To take to a Rav like Rabbi Sigerman, the Kron, to come to meet with a couple and to say this is what it means, and I can meet with them together and then meet with them separately to say what it means. There's a few nice articles on this noseh. Rav Yoel Katan and his wife has an article. There's in Sefer Puah, as we said. There's in Asya. There's a nice article. There's a lot of information out there, and chashuv. I think to think about it, we are exposed. If we're in this parsha, we're exposed to a lot of information. That may be very delicate information. We have to understand how do we use it properly. Sheilot, bayot, ta'anot, ma'anot. Anybody has a problem? Otherwise, anan neparet ke yedidim. I'll send you the PowerPoint, B'ezrat Hashem.
Beautiful.
Shalom, shalom. Sei gesund, kol tov, erev tov. Shalom, shalom.